So finally, we come to our media picks for the month. This month, why don't you go first? What's got you watching?
It's got to be Detectorists, hasn't it? It's the
Detectorists. Oh.
Detectorists. It's the third series of Detectorists. It's been it began life as the sort of sleeper hit for BBC Four, written by the actor Mackenzie Crook,
Mm-hmm.
and directed by him. Um, it has become a must-see for many archaeologists, simply for the it's a beautifully written, acted, observed, slow burn comedy of middle-aged male life, I think. Um,
And and so it's just worthwhile, I guess, just saying that this is not in the same vein as your typical Netflix series. Yeah, this is very British, very two men in a field kind of
that is
very
exactly
yeah.
most of the running time is actually two men in a field. Mackenzie Crook um, plays a metal detectorist and archaeologist called Andy,
Hmm.
and he and his best friend Lance, played by Toby Jones, the wonderful Toby Jones, are members of a local metal detecting club in Essex, and they basically go around their permissions looking for stuff. Now,
Okay, so at this point, I just wanted to just quickly just ask because I watched, I've caught a little bit of Detectorists because my in-laws love it, and so last Christmas, like around about this time last year, we watched an episode or two where there'd been a great big Saxon discovery. I think it was loosely based on the idea of the Staffordshire Hoard.
it was a mixture of the Staffordshire Hoard and the Alfred Jewel.
Okay, yeah, oh yes, yeah, because there was one basically key treasure, wasn't
That's
there?
right.
And the thing, what made me uncomfortable, the thing that sort of that made me was the fact that they kept on using terminology that I thought was unhelpful. Again, in terms of the public perception of archaeology and heritage and so on and so forth. So, for example, they talked about prize money when it came to the portable antiquities scheme. The fact that they were waiting on the prize money, prize being the active word there, as opposed to some other terminology. I mean, because I suppose what you could say is, the value, even call it, the price or something like that. But it's made it sound as though it was a fairground where they plucked something out of the ground and they were getting. So it made me uncomfortable, and then I never really went back again. But it sounds as though this is actually a platform whereby actually people are being, without even knowing it, being educated on land use. I mean, I think in preparing for this, you mentioned that some legal terminology is is quoted.
That's right. I mean, the previous series centered on a missing German bomber, and it's the first time I've heard the Protection of Military Remains Act quoted in a TV sitcom, and it's probably going to be the last as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things that people like about it is that it has been very well researched.
Hmm.
The
So,
terminology.
and is that researched in terms of? Sorry, I know you were just about to explain. Sorry, but is that researched in terms of the detectorist community, or is it the archaeologist community, or is it all of it? I mean, is it all well researched?
Um, I would argue that it is well enough researched that it throws up enough questions for the archaeological community and actually the detectorist community, because it doesn't shy away from issues of night hawking and as we should probably call it, theft using metal detectors.
Right.
Yeah, that's been a recurring theme as well. It also covers themes you know, of development in the countryside in the current series, of the issues, and as well as the personal issues as well. It's very much a about the broader human comedy, really, of relationships and issues. In the current series, we've got Andy and his wife with their young baby, who are trying to buy a house and with on very little money. But the really interesting thing is, and I think this is why I wanted to pick it for archaeologists, this series is actually quite uncomfortable. and quite rightly uncomfortable, because as the series picks up, Andy's working. He qualified as an archaeologist in the previous series. We know that, and at the beginning of this series, he's working on a development site,
Mm-hmm.
to a site supervisor who he describes as being dead behind the eyes. And when he discovers a piece of Roman mosaic, he's told to go and work somewhere else. And when he comes back, he discovers that it's been basically destroyed, machined away.
Right.
At which point he walks off, because he's been told basically that they're not there to find anything; they're there to facilitate the development.
Yeah.
Now, that
Well, that's interesting because we all hear those sorts of horror stories, don't we? I know I've heard a few that I've talked about openly on this YouTube channel, and a few which I don't feel comfortable talking about. And that's it. So in that sense, actually, this series is offering.
it's offering a really important critique.
Yeah, yeah, and a place for those sorts of stories just to come out, and that's really interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think the point. I mean, the wider point I'm making, and as I say, it is a beautifully made series. It's beautifully shot. It's beautifully scored in this sort of folk idiom. It has some wonderful imagery. They use drone shots beautifully. They've got some wonderful magic realist magpies who are sort of a recurring theme as guardians of the landscape, and guardians of the treasure. There is likely to be we're coming to the end of the series now, and there is likely to be a new treasure found at the end. Whether the treasure is a personal one or a financial one or whatever, or a mixture, treasures, we're yet to find out. But it's a very layered piece that raises all sorts of very interesting questions, and it's beautifully made.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, I'll have to give it a go. I mean, my in-laws aren't unwise people. They must watch it for a good reason. Okay. You've convinced me. You haven't converted me, but you've convinced me. I'll give it a go.
I just think it's worth remembering. Just very quick point, just to finish on, Mark. I think it is really important that, and we were talking about publication perceptions of archaeology earlier. I think it's really important to see that from inside our archaeological silo, that on the outside, archaeologists aren't always the good guys.
No. No. Well, yes. Yes, definitely. Okay, and I'll give it a go. Okay, well, my media pick of the month is a film that my wife came across. The lovely Mrs. Soup came across one day on the old Netflix.
As you did.
And basically, I was in the office doing some work. It was a Saturday afternoon, and she didn't want to keep on watching whatever it was that we were watching together. Yeah, I think we were whatever series we were into at that point. So she went looking for a film, and she tried something called The Age of Adaline, which is a fascinating little film. It came out in 2015, and it's a slow burn. It's a film that at the beginning you're like, what is this about? Is this for me? There's a quirky voiceover that's kind of giving almost a Wes Anderson type feel to the movie, where and this isn't by no means a spoiler, but basically she's driving somewhere and is subject to a process that makes her essentially unaging. She ceases to age. She's aged 29 when this process happens to her, and for the rest of her life, from the early 1900s through to the early 2000s, she is physically 29 years old. And so there's this sort of Wes Anderson type sort of narration, sort of saying, at 12:15 p.m. on the 14th of October, blah blah blah, she fell into the pool, and then this happened, and then that happened. The heartbeat stopped, and then this process wouldn't be discovered until 2035. And it's a very quirky narration, and then the drama is quite slow, but the story is beautiful. for a couple of reasons. The reason why I'm mentioning it on this particular video is because she becomes a sort of a living vessel for history. She rightly loves all the stuff that she can remember from when she was a child, in particular, and then when she was a young adult. But as she continues to age and moves forward, she doesn't become cynical. She doesn't change necessarily in terms of her persona. She simply becomes wiser. And the actress portraying Adeline, Blake Lively, was 27 when she played the role of this eternal 29-year-old. But there was a certain centered quality to her performance, a reserved quality to her performance, that makes her a very believable, 120-year-old human being. And what's beautiful is that she basically, I was jealous. Basically, that's what I'm getting at. I was jealous of her ability to see changes in human society with that perspective, with a young body being allowed into those moments where maybe if you are 100 years old, you're not going to get to go to a party or whatever. You can't physically do it, perhaps. She was living as a vessel of history, personal history, and also memories, but also as an observer of history. And I loved it. But then there's a wonderful romantic twist as well. And I shared it on the RKSU Facebook page, saying that the historian in me was jealous, but the romantics in me and Mrs. Soup were high-fiving at the end.
That sounds, it sounds wonderful. I have to say, I'm a big fan of movies that play with time and shows time. There's a wonderful Stephen Sondheim musical called Merrily We Roll Along, which basically starts at the end and works forward to the beginning. In reverse time, and so you see somebody who's cynical and hard-bitten and bruised by life reverting to being a student just out of college, celebrating everything that they're looking forward to. And it's very moving and very thought-provoking. There's but also in historical terms, there's the Woody Allen movie Zelig, where you have this anonymous character who crops up at various points in 20th century history. So I think at one point he's in an audience at a Nuremberg rally watching Hitler. It's that kind of thing. And there's another again very fine film called Peggy Sue Got Married, where a middle-aged woman suddenly reverts back to her prom night, and it's will she or won't she avoid this dead-end marriage that she's got into, and so that's a sort of recurring theme in a certain genre of cinema, previously in fiction. That ability, it's interesting, isn't it? It sounds as though it shares in common something which H.G. Wells wrote about in The Time Machine, where in The Time Machine you can only go forward from where you are, you can't go back from where you are. So you're able to see and seize the future, or learn from the future. In her case, or in the case of this film, I mean, this is subtly different in so much as she, there is because of her condition, and it is in many respects it's like a condition. She actually doesn't. She cannot. She doesn't have the option. It's not time travel. She doesn't have the option to go back in time and fix anything. No.
And so actually what you see is her living with, first of all, the fact that people start to question what's going on. You're 47. Why do you look like a 29-year-old? Then the government becomes interested in her. So then she has to flee because this is the height of McCarthyism, and she has to go into hiding. And then, eventually, again, this isn't a spoiler, but family members who children, for example, or nieces and nephews, they become older than you, and then eventually they are old ladies or old men, but you're still a 29-year-old, and they're talking to her as a character like children. It's such a wonderful. It plays with the idea of the human condition,
Yeah.
and crucially plays with this idea of people moving through history in such a gentle way. And I recently I showed this film to some friends a couple of days ago, and initially they had I saw my reaction on them. Initially they were going, "What's this?" And then, "Is this really for me?" And then eventually just going, "This is really interesting." And then, "Oh, this is really interesting." And then, "Yay!" at the end. Like, so, previously as media picks, I've tried to pick sort of hard hitting stuff, or stuff that has a particular I don't know, an edge to it. And this one doesn't have an edge. This one is just a wonderful experience, and I strongly recommend it. Give it a go. That's what I'd say.
No, it sounds great. I think pulling it back to archaeology, as we probably should at the end. It's in the end, archaeology is about putting things on the timeline, isn't it? And and trying to imagine lives, even when we're classifying our BB2 grown. What we're trying to do also is envision the person who held that pot, made the stew. When we're doing a lipid analysis, it's what did the cheese taste like? Those human touches to the past, to the timeline, I think are absolutely crucially important. And looking at something like that in a fictional way, it sounds absolutely delightful. I'm going to look it up. Thank you.
Yeah, no, definitely do. Yeah, and actually, I guess my final thing there is that's what I love about this film, is that it really highlights that actually historical events and the way that they're recorded are in many ways very dispassionate. What the beauty, and this is, I think, also comes back to why archaeologists love physical artifacts, is that the beauty of the actual story that we're trying to tell is often in the intangible, and it's often in who made this. Oh, we don't know, but isn't this a wonderful outcome of that person? I mean, on a very basic human level, why are we here? Well, we're here because at some point something wonderful happened, and two people met each other or whatever. Stories that are often lost to archaeology, and this is the reason why, as a historian, as an archaeologist, I'd love the opportunity, but at the same time, the opportunity to witness history unfolding. But at the same time, the film, I think, very elegantly deals with the fact that actually you don't necessarily want this. If you live forever and only you can, then actually there is something about life and the patterns of life that's integral to history and to the things that we love as archaeologists.
And forever, as the Queen song said in Highlander, which was another
same
thing.
When love must die. Yeah. Sorry, my throat's too sore for that. Yeah. When love must die.
Freddie Mercury's falsetto is not for the faint-hearted.
No, it's not. No. Oh. I'm going to go and watch Highlander, I think, now. Okay, well, as we all should. Thank you again for your time this month, Andy. And next month, well, it's going to be Christmas.
It's our review of the year.
It is, yeah. We're not quite sure how we're going to do that yet, but we're going to plan it, and it will happen. So let's look forward to that. Thank you, guys. Well, thank you again, Andy. Thank you, everyone at home, for tuning in. And as ever, until next time, do take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.